I used to believe that if you worked hard enough, if you showed up early and left late, if you kept improving every single day, the game would always reward you. That talent was protection. That performance was proof that if you kept doing your job on the court, everything else would fall into place automatically. For most of my life, that belief felt true. Every gym I walked into, every game I played, effort turned into results. Misses turned into makes. Doubt turned into confidence. Wins turned into validation. So I carried that mindset with me into the biggest stage of my life, convinced that talent alone was enough. But then something happened that no one warns you about. Not coaches, not fans, not the cameras. There comes a moment when you realize the rules you grew up believing in don't fully apply anymore. When you do everything right and it still doesn't feel like enough. When the scoreboard doesn't tell the full story. When the noise around you becomes louder than the work you're putting in. That moment didn't arrive with a dramatic headline or a single bad game. It crept in quietly, subtle at first, easy to ignore. But once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. And that's when I understood something that completely changed how I see this league, this level, and myself. Talent gets you noticed. Hard work gets you respect. But at the top, there's another layer nobody talks about. And the day I realized that was the day basketball stopped feeling simple. For a long time, I tried to convince myself nothing had changed. I told myself the discomfort was just pressure, just nerves, just part of adjusting. That if I stayed focused, stayed disciplined, stayed consistent, everything would balance out like it always had. Because that's what talent had taught me growing up, that the work eventually speaks for itself. But slowly, I started noticing things that didn't fit that story. Conversations that felt different, reactions that felt delayed, moments where the effort was there, the performance was there, but the response felt muted. Not negative, just different. And that's what made it confusing. No one was saying anything directly. No one was telling me I wasn't good enough. But I could feel a shift in the air, a sense that the game wasn't only being played on the court anymore, that what happened during 40 minutes was only part of the equation. I began to realize that at this level, talent doesn't speak for itself. It competes with narratives, expectations, timing, and perception. And suddenly, being great wasn't just about what you did, but how it fit into the story people already wanted to tell. That realization didn't make me angry. It made me quiet. Because once you see it, you start questioning things you never questioned before. You start wondering why some performances feel amplified while others feel minimized. Why the same mistake can mean different things depending on who makes it. Why effort feels invisible some nights and overwhelming on others. And that's when the idea that talent alone controls your destiny starts to crack. Not all at once, but enough to make you uneasy. I started replaying moments in my head more than I ever had before. Not just plays or shots, but reactions, facial expressions, commentary, the silence after certain performances. I would leave the court knowing I had given everything, knowing I had competed the right way, and yet I'd feel this strange disconnect, like the outcome wasn't fully mine to define anymore. That's when it hit me that talent at this level doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists inside systems, inside opinion, inside conversations you're not always a part of. And that realization messes with you because it challenges the one thing you've always trusted, the idea that control lives in effort. Suddenly, control feels shared, sometimes taken, sometimes delayed. You begin to sense that timing matters, that perception matters, that who people want you to be can sometimes matter more than what you actually do. And you don't know how to respond to that because you were never trained for it. No drill prepares you for it. No film session explains it. You're just expected to adapt quietly, professionally, without letting it show. And that's when the weight starts building. Not from failure, but from awareness. Awareness that the game you're playing now is layered. That talent opens the door, but it doesn't decide how long you're allowed to stay in the room. And once that thought settles in, you realize you're not just competing against opponents anymore, you're competing against expectations that don't always move with logic. There was a moment when I stopped trying to explain it away and finally accepted what I was feeling. Not because something dramatic happened, but because the pattern became impossible to ignore. I could sense when a game would be talked about before it even started. I could feel which performances would be celebrated and which ones would quietly pass by. And that's when I understood that at this level, basketball isn't judged in isolation. It's filtered through expectations, narratives, and comparisons that already exist long before you step on the floor. That realization doesn't make you bitter, but it does make you more careful. You start choosing words differently. You start managing reactions instead of just emotions. You start realizing that talent is only the entry point, not the deciding factor. What happens after that depends on how you're positioned, how you're framed, and how much space the league, the media, and the audience are willing to give you in that moment. And the hardest part is that none of this is written anywhere. There's no rule book for it, no warning label. You're expected to figure it out while still performing at the highest level, so you adapt. You learn when to push and when to stay quiet, when to assert yourself and when to let things play out. Because once you accept that talent alone isn't enough, you realize the real challenge isn't becoming great, it's staying steady in a game that keeps shifting beneath your feet. That understanding changed how I experienced everything. Wins didn't feel as clean. Losses felt heavier than they should have. Not because I doubted my ability, but because I was constantly aware of how moments would be interpreted once they left the court. You start carrying an invisible filter in your mind, asking yourself how things will look instead of how they feel, and that's exhausting. Because when talent alone isn't enough, you begin measuring yourself by standards that keep moving. One night, you're praised for confidence. The next, you're questioned for the same behavior. One performance gets framed as leadership, another as pressure. And slowly, without realizing it, you start shrinking parts of yourself to fit expectations you didn't create. That's the quiet cost nobody prepares you for. You're still competing, still pushing, still hungry, but now you're doing it while managing perception, timing, and narrative all at once. And the scary part is that this pressure doesn't come from opponents, it comes from awareness. From knowing that at this level, success is no longer just about being better, it's about being acceptable, understandable, and comfortable for everyone watching. That realization doesn't break you, but it forces you to grow faster than you plan to. Because once talent stops being the only thing that matters, you have to learn how to protect your confidence in ways talent never taught you. Over time, I stopped resisting that reality and started learning from it. I realized that fighting the system only drains you, but understanding it gives you balance. Talent may open doors, but awareness teaches you how to walk through them without losing yourself. I began focusing less on controlling outcomes and more on controlling habits, how I prepared, how I responded, how I stayed grounded when opinions shifted overnight. That shift didn't make things easier, but it made them clearer. I learned that consistency matters more than moments, that patience is a skill, just like shooting or footwork, and that confidence at this level has to be built quietly, without applause. You stop chasing validation and start trusting your process. You stop trying to win every conversation and focus on winning your own standards. And somewhere in that adjustment, the pressure starts to change shape. It doesn't disappear, but it becomes familiar, less personal, less threatening. You understand that not every performance needs to prove something, and not every reaction deserves your energy. That's when growth really begins, not when talent shines the brightest, but when you learn how to stand steady in a game that's bigger than just basketball. Looking back, I don't see that realization as something negative anymore. I see it as necessary. Talent gave me confidence. Hard work gave me discipline. But understanding that talent alone isn't enough gave me perspective. It taught me that growth at this level isn't just physical, it's mental, emotional, and personal. It taught me that success doesn't simplify your life, it complicates it. And learning how to move through that complexity without losing who you are is part of becoming complete. I don't play to prove I belong anymore. I play because I know what it took to get here and what it takes to stay. The game didn't get unfair, it got real. And once you accept that, you stop chasing control and start building resilience. You stop asking for things to be easier and start preparing to be stronger. If you're watching this and you've ever felt like doing everything right still wasn't enough, understand this, that feeling isn't failure. It's growth trying to teach you something deeper. Talent will open doors, but awareness decides how long you stay. And once you learn that lesson, you don't lose belief in yourself, you rebuild it on something stronger. If this story resonated with you, stay here. Subscribe. Because this channel isn't about highlights. It's about the truth behind them.